helps that Steven's an elf as well, because, elves are the best race. But, yeah.
You normally play the little child race, don't you, in every game you play?
No, Palmer, that's not true.
Hello, welcome to the latest NP Reacts. My name is Palmer and I'm joined by Naris, and we're looking at the latest Ashes of Creation live stream where they showed off crafting. Well, not crafting, actually gathering, an important difference. So we're going to jump straight into the video. But Naris, how are you? How are you, mate? You well?
I'm doing well, thanks, Palmer. How about yourself, buddy?
I'm very well. We can see your face for the first time. So this was quite a good stream, I thought. And let's hear what Steven has to say. We'll pause the video when we want to give our thoughts and reactions, or just pipe up when
we've been working on. And
when there's a little gap in what he's saying.
Have the absolute privilege of being joined by two of our stellar developers helping bring the world of Vera to life for all of us. One of our glorious designers, Mr. Corey. How are you doing, Corey?
Yeah, I'm sure Corey's doing well. What do you think of the graphics here? This is I think this is spring. I think that's meant to be pollen in the air that we're seeing here. So this is one of the weather effects, and it looks quite nice. It looks a bit blurry, but I think that's deliberate.
Yeah, it looks okay, but I must admit my worry is the kind of visual effects pollution. We kind of saw them in All for One with the spell effects, and my only concern is here it's a little bit over the top. It's a little bit in your face.
Yeah, if something looks good, there's always a tendency to say, well, it looks really good, so let's have lots of it. But actually, you don't really always want to have lots of it.
No, less is more, definitely.
Joined by one of our absolutely phenomenal senior gameplay engineers, Mr. Alex. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing pretty well. Excited to be here.
Excited to have you as well, because, of course, the magic lives in the code. And you have done an awesome job in helping design.
Steven's always so nice to his staff, but he's just so full of shit as well. I mean, all this stuff.
Is that the technical term, is it, Palmer?
The magic lives in the code. What is he talking about? Let's fast forward a bit, because he talks to his staff, and that's wonderful. Right, here we go. We're going to see some gathering. He's going to do some gathering now.
My goodness. All right, so that is probably the first major reveal, is that in Ashes of Creation, we have now expanded the resource gathering system to include a great many of what the world is showing you of these resources. So when you see a tree, you can chop a tree.
Yeah, this is one of the great things. So in the Alpha 1, which we played, which was never meant to be like a full version of the game, we always knew that it was just like a really basic early version of the game. You had like trees all around, but there is one or two, you had to find one or two certain places on the map where there were trees you could actually cut down, which were sort of sparkly. They had a sparkly effect on them. Whereas now they've changed it so all of these trees, as far as I can tell, are choppable, which is quite similar to New World. And that's a really huge difference and a really big and really good change to the game.
Absolutely.
If you see a rock, you can mine a rock.
If you see a rock, you can mine a rock.
Before we actually chop this tree down, I want to tell you that I have played a lot of MMOs. I've played a lot of games. And I don't think I have ever seen a tree fall to this high of a visual fidelity standard.
That's a bold claim.
It is.
And
it is.
Let me just chop this down, and then we can talk about what it took to get here. All right? Does this tree look good? Should we chop this one down? How's the angle here? We're going to get a nice view from this.
To be honest, Arcade has some pretty tall trees.
Yeah.
I love the new UI.
Oh, I know. And the sound.
There we go.
Get ready.
There we go.
It's happening.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
It does
Look
look
at
good.
the dust kick up. Look at the canopy of the tree get impacted and when it falls. Wait. That's not all.
Sorry, tell us again, Naris.
I was just saying that, the way the kind of branches bounced as it fell down onto the ground, it looked quite realistic.
Yeah, I mean, and it's just going to be fun to do this because like chopping trees in most games
As
is
it dissolves.
it's not a great deal of fun if you're honest. It soon gets a bit boring, but these little touches are going to make it more interesting.
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
So we're speeding this up now to give you guys an idea of how these assets regrow in the world.
Yeah, and that's cool because this was something that happened in Arcade where you chop down a tree and it would regrow and you get like a sapling and then you get sort of a baby tree and then eventually it would be a full-grown tree. And it's quite cool because you could see where there was going to be a tree. Even though, well, actually, I think you could chop it down when it was just a sapling, but you wouldn't get very much wood. But it was just a nice feature of the game. It wouldn't just magically respawn.
Grew like 50% wider.
Definitely.
Physics.
It's got New World vibes, hasn't it? For sure. You know, the way that you can mine anything, you can interact with anything, and it replenishes, which is, you know, a good step in my book. Because although New World didn't do a lot right, in my opinion, gathering and harvesting was one of those things that it did do very well.
Well, New World ripped off Ashes a little bit. I mean, I remember, although it obviously came out years before Ashes will ever come out. I remember Stephen once had a sort of a moan at this, a bit of a sly dig, complaining that New World had stolen a lot of Ash's ideas, which I think was probably true. I think it had, but so it was good to see Ashes returning the favour a little bit and stealing from New World a little bit. But one of the things that's really fun in New World is the fact that you can see in the distance trees falling down. So you can see, oh, you know, somebody is over there doing something, and even if it doesn't really affect you very much, it just adds to the idea that there's some sort of life in the world and stuff going on. Other people are doing stuff around you.
Definitely, and I mean, I could be making a wild leap here, but I know initially Ashes planned for kind of different tiers of resources that would kind of move, you know, when you kind of harvested them. So I assume that kind of system will change alongside this new kind of gathering and harvesting system. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out.
Fidelity bar. And I think this type of system really complements that goal. It's incredibly immersive. And it feels good. Now, of course, this stuff is all work in progress still, right? This is, this is going to land. Let's see that physics. Okay. That's not bad. That's pretty good.
This is where I was telling you about taming the physics.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, that felt pretty good. Now, of course, you know, there's a lot that goes into making a world that's filled with this amount of resources that can be gathered. Corey, talk to me a little bit about what this change in really widening up.
There, Palmer. I don't know if it's dust or the pollen. It's just far too much. You know, it's something you'd expect in a desert, not kind of a grassland, mesa, and forest.
I'm pretty sure from what they've said in the past that it is meant to be pollen, but I've got to say I've never seen pollen like that. It's a sort of clouds of pollen. I don't know if you do in some parts of the world, but I mean, we get loads of pollen where I live, well, where we both live in England, and because I get hay fever, and I've never seen like this. Oh, he's going to chop a rock. Let's hear him pickaxing a rock.
The change to have everything that you see gatherable kind of allows us to attach the changes that you see during the seasons to all the gatherables that you see. So the information that you learn from season to season and about each gatherable will be valuable to you as a gatherer.
Right.
And
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I'm going to stop it here because I think this is something that's really exciting and important about the game. Although presumably it won't really affect the rocks, but so there will be certain resources, and in fact they show you this a bit further on in the video, I think, because I've seen the video once before, which are only available in certain times of the year. So having a bit of knowledge of the game and knowledge of the game world is going to really help you, because it won't always be possible to sort of go out and find what you want. It's going to be a case sometimes of not only knowing where to find it, but knowing when to find it, which season it's available, and then when the right season comes around, knowing where to go. So from the player's perspective, learning about the world and getting some knowledge about the world and about the area that you live in, because I imagine once you sort of reach endgame at least, you're probably not, well, it depends on how you want to play, but you might not be moving around that much. You might be sort of living in the region where your home is, where your sort of home node is. Might be a large region and a large area of space, but a lot of people aren't going to be moving around the entire world map all the time, because there's no fast travel or very little fast travel. So getting your sort of local knowledge of the area is really going to help you, and that's good, because if you do know your area well, it sort of gives you a real sense of accomplishment and achievement if you sort of know the places to go, and you know that other players in this game aren't going to know the places to go. And it makes being a gatherer something that is actually a little bit challenging, whereas in most games, sort of gathering a lot is just something that, you know, is not challenging at all. It's just a case of having the willingness to repetitively mine rocks over and over and over. But this game is going to be a little bit more to it than that, I think.
Absolutely, and it kind of, for me, it really comes back to that dynamic world that Ashes is promising, you know, where the node system will change things. And even when it comes down to gathering in the seasons, you know, things will change on a kind of monthly or weekly basis, which is very cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then the other thing is, you know, when we talk about, like, for example, looking at this rock here, I don't know what that rock is before I actually complete the harvest. But after I complete the harvest, I see that I collected basalt in the bottom right-hand corner. Talk to me a little bit about kind of that decision and what that means.
Yeah, totally. So you know, there's a bunch of different things in Ashes that are bee gatherable, right? We have plants and trees and rocks and fish and that animals and creatures that can be tamed, right? And you know, we're thinking to reach the visual fidelity bar and to have things a little bit more rooted in what we know, is that it wouldn't really make sense for you to just see gold all over the world the same way that you would, like, you know, plants and trees. So we wanted to get feedback on what players think about you know, some of the different gatherable types having kind of different things that you would have to know and expect from them. So rocks are a good example of this, where, you know, you can see a rock, but until you crack that thing open, you don't know if it's full of stone, crystals, rubies, gold. So we wanted to try that out with some of our gatherables to have players have to open this thing up. And that's not to say that players won't stumble on a nice lode or vein or geode of gold. But most of the stuff that they would find in the world, unless they look hard enough, would require them to crack that stone open.
Right.
So you won't know what you're getting until you crack the stone open, as you said. So they said you want feedback on this. What's your feedback? Do you think that's a good idea?
I think it's very frustrating for miners, in all honesty. I mean, I've never mined ore in real life, I must admit, but, you know, I think there should be certain tells that you could potentially find, or, you know, certain regions which would denote a certain type of ore, and this should kind of increases your proficiency in the mining artisan tree does. How about you, Palmer?
It's a little bit similar to Arcades, from what I can recall. It's been a while since I played Arcades, but I'm pretty sure the way it works there is that you wouldn't always know what you were going to get before you... actually, I think there's a difference between stuff that just gives you rock and stuff that gives you ore. But if it gives you ore, then you don't necessarily know for certain what type of ore you're going to get until you mine it. I assume that the way this is going to work is that there will still be regions, different parts of the map that have different ores. So some places may have iron and a small chance of getting gold. Some places may have iron and a large chance of getting gold, or some places may have like a small chance of getting iron and a small chance of getting silver and a small chance of getting rubies or whatever. So it's not completely random. I think there's a difference between it being completely random and not knowing what you're going to get until you crack it open. So, I mean, assuming that's right, assuming that it's possible to get a feel for which parts of the world are likely to have which minerals, I think the idea of then saying, like, you don't know for sure what you're going to get until you crack open the rock is okay. I quite like it, actually. I quite like the feature. And I'm speaking as somebody who's probably going to do a lot of mining, so I quite like my resource gathering and that sort of thing, especially if there's a chance to go to places where someone else is trying to get the resources and kill them, which I always enjoyed. Yeah, what's the place in Arcades? I think it was called Cinderstone, I think that's what it was called, where it was like loads of volcanoes and it had like rocks in it, and you could go and do mining and then hopefully get a chance to do some PvP as well. If that sort of thing happens here, that's going to be quite good fun.
Absolutely.
A specific area.
PvP.
So,
A bit of good old PvP.
yeah, a bit of nastiness, a bit of briefing irony, but we're going to be good. We're only going to be nasty to people that we're actually at war with or have a genuine disagreement with, as I understand it. Not quite so much killing people at random. I think, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. I suppose we'll see what rules of leadership decides to lay down. But
And so that allows you to start kind of making shapes and having more strategic areas that you're surveying, right? If you could connect multiple pylons to create a shape, maybe you could follow the twisting caverns of a cave. Maybe if you're out in the open like we are here, you could just try and make yourself a nice widened shape to scan as much of the area as possible. So it'll be up to the player to be tricky with their surveying tool to try and get the most efficiency out of their survey.
so you will be able to survey. You know what? I'm going to go back a bit because I think we may have missed something important. I want to hear about surveying and how that's going to work.
Plants, you might learn when or geode of gold.
Right, here we go.
But most of the stuff that they would find in the world, unless they look hard enough, would require them to crack that stone open.
Right. And of course, there are additional systems, some that we haven't really gone into too much detail on, but as an example, surveying can play a key role in helping players to identify locations of rare resources within an area. Is that correct?
Yeah, definitely.
Talk to me a little bit about surveying.
Yeah, so surveying is a way that players can check out an area for resources. So players can learn where resources are that are static and that grow back in the same location. But we'll also have resources in Ashes that can spawn anywhere.
Okay.
So surveying will help players locate those resources. So if they're looking for something specific, they can hunt them down. Surveying will also allow players to uncover hidden resources that players wouldn't be able to see with their naked eye.
Okay.
Another thing that surveying.
So this is another cool feature because I assume, because we know that there are various professions in Ashes, and unlike other games actually where the main thing is crafting and you have to learn a crafting profession, but there's less focus on gathering. In Ashes, I think about saying you're going to have to choose really what to specialise in, and you can specialise in being a gatherer. So I guess the surveying is going to be linked to specialising in gathering. So if you do specialise in gathering, you're going to have special abilities that other characters just don't have, which
thing would provide is some of the information that we were talking about before, right? Like for instance, if you survey and inside of your survey area, there's plants. You might learn when that plant, what season that plant likes to grow in. You might learn whether it likes to be watered during the winter versus how it likes to be watered in the summer. You might learn.
I see that the interior of this rock.
So does that mean that you're going to water plants even in the will? I guess you would water plants if you were growing stuff on your own property, on your freehold. But yeah, do you water plants in the wilderness? Is that how it works?
I mean, I personally wouldn't guess in the wilderness, but yeah, I certainly reckon on freeholds personally.
Rock now has ore in it.
Yeah, so you found one with some iron. So not all those rocks are just slabs of basalt. You might find some iron, maybe some gold, maybe some copper. We'll see.
Oh, that is super cool. This one was also iron. Very nice.
Yeah, it looks like you found a little iron deposit there.
And so when players interact with the survey system, talk to me a little bit about what that interaction looks like. What exactly does the survey gameplay layer feel like?
Good question.
Yeah, so you'd work with a surveying tool, and you set the surveying tool down, and that tool would have a specific area in which it's able to uncover and extract information about the resources that are in the area. So, you know, as a starting out gatherer, you might end up with one of the tools, right? But as you progress and become more proficient with using the tool, you might be able to set up additional pylons and extend the area of your survey.
More pylons.
Yes,
Sorry.
pylons. So, right, and so that allows you to start kind of making shapes and having more strategic areas that you're surveying, right? If you could connect multiple pylons to create a shape, you know, maybe you could follow the twisting caverns of a cave. Maybe if you're out in the open like we are here, you could just try and make yourself a nice widened shape to scan as much of the area as possible. So
Now, this reminds me a lot of the original Star Wars Galaxies. I don't know if you ever played that before they messed it up, but so in Star Wars Galaxies, resources did used to move around, which was a bit odd because the resources were like metals and chemicals and oil and stuff under the ground. So I'm not quite sure how it was meant to move around, but it did. And you would set up surveying tools, and those surveying tools would tell you what was in the local area. And so you'd wander around the map until you found what you wanted, and then you could plant down your extractors to get the stuff. So I don't know, did you ever play Star Wars Galaxies at all?
Oh, very briefly, not for very long. So that's interesting to know, actually.
Yeah, good game.
So it'll be up to the player to be tricky with their surveying tool to try and get the most efficiency out of their survey.
Okay, I would like to point out one thing, is that are these apple bushes? I'm collecting
Yes.
apples, and they're like from a bush.
They are from a bush.
That is
Why not?
awesome.
Hey, this is Vera.
I know.
Steven's thinking,
This is Vera. There are apples that grow on bushes.
he's thinking that can't be right.
So the survey system, I think, is one that's really cool because it also all is a part of this kind of cohesive land management system, right? Is that resources spawn at a set rate,
Oh,
and that
that little pool of water, that looks really nice. Let's go back and let's look at this. Just when he was, it's just something that struck me, just as he was sort of walking towards it. That just looks beautiful. This is a fantastic environment. If they just get rid of the pollen a little bit.
Oh, wow, I see what you mean.
Yeah, and the trees sort of reflected, but only reflected in a fairly realistic way. That's quite nice.
And
interfacing
even the ripples in the water are
with the
realistic,
resource system.
Yeah.
If there is a high traffic and a
So are those mushrooms? No, they don't appear to be gatherable mushrooms, otherwise you would be gathering them. I like the sickle.
Animation's very cool, very fluid.
It is, yeah.
the land management score of the area, and how does that affect the resource spawn?
Okay.
Yeah, it could be positive or negative or both simultaneously. So the land health value, right, ties into the health of a specific ecosystem, and the ecosystem can kind of scale with different segment sizes of the world, or the world itself, a biome, maybe a node, maybe a player's freehold, and the things that a player does in those areas will contribute to health in a positive or negative way. So, doing something like rotating your crops might increase the health of the land, because that's considered something good to do. And maybe apprehending or removing poachers that are overhunting a certain species could be helpful to the health of the land. Maybe the mayor puts out a request for players to try and get rid of invasive species that are plants. Maybe they're overgrowing weed, and it's stopping other valuable plants from growing. Yes.
Nice.
So this just sounds phenomenally complicated in a way, but it could be interesting. And it does seem as if they're talking about land management here, about the wilderness, not just about freeholds, at least in what they're saying now. But one of the things that I quite like, well, there are two things I like about this. I mean, one is the possibility for a mayor or sort of local sort of political leader of some kind to affect the quality of the local environment by maybe doing something to help the gatherers, which in turn would help the crafters and maybe sort of help the general economy, which actually will help everybody, the PvEs and the PvPers, if they're able to get the gear that they need, even if they don't necessarily understand where it comes from. Because you're going to get people who are just interested in combat, but they want gear. They may not understand the other systems, they may not have any interest in the other systems, but actually the other systems will affect them. The gathering and the crafting will actually affect them, even if they don't quite know, because it will affect what's available in the local shops when they try to buy gear. So the mayor might have some responsibility for all of those things and will be in a position to make a difference. So that's interesting. The other thing that seems interesting to me, although I'm kind of guessing here if this is how it's going to work, is the fact that the area around the settlements, around the big settlement, the big cities and the metropolises, are likely to become, I would assume, sort of over-farmed, which means that the resources will not be as easily available there. They won't just sort of respawn. If an area is over-farmed, they might not respawn at all, or they'll respawn more slowly. So if you're interested in gathering, you're going to have to explore a bit and go a bit further afield, or that's my guess based on what Stephen has just said. So gatherers are going to have to sort of, wander off and explore and find stuff a bit, because if you just hang out in a big city, which I assume is where the trading is going to take place, or maybe even a lot of the crafting is going to take place, you're not going to find the stuff there. So there's going to be a need to go to more remote areas to gather stuff and then come back to the more civilized areas and maybe to sell your stuff there or to use it there, which I think is going to be a good feature if that is how it works.
Absolutely, and the thing that kind of struck me is I know that Stephen's played Arcade very extensively and he absolutely despises the labour system in Arcade, but essentially what they're describing to me with this system is kind of a way of artificially reducing how much gathering and how much harvesting you can do, because you'll get to a point where you've gathered everything in the zone and you just can't keep gathering there, you'll need to go further afield. And that kind of takes travel time, there's the danger, there's the risk.
Yeah.
So, to me, it's just a way of kind of limiting how much kind of progress you can make it in a particular stage.
Yeah, exactly, which is really good. And it's far cleverer and far more interesting than having a labour system. But it does put a sort of a limit on what you can do without forcing you to make a bit more effort and to try doing something different. So, yeah, it's fantastic.
And so every action would feed into a positive thing in one area for the health of the land, but it could also have repercussions in another, right? If you overhunt predators, the prey have no predators picking them off. So the spawn rates of those rabbits that the wolves usually take care of could go up. And maybe if you overhunt the rabbits, the wolves want to find another place to go. So the ecosystem health and land health system allows us to really root players into the world and learn about their surroundings, learn about what repercussions their actions have, and work together to work within and manipulate that system.
Right, are you telling me if my land management is poor and I cut down all the trees, my land will just be barren for long periods of time?
Yeah, it could definitely extend the amount of time that it would take for what you want to grow back.
Oh, that's cool.
That is pretty cool. And that is another component of how player activity or actions within the world have a visible and systemic effect on that world's economy. And that helps to simulate the ebb and flow of supply chains, of the prevalence in the locality of certain resources being depleted, and having extended periods of time where the players go without that, and that can spur the need for transiting materials across the world, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, so it's clever. It's a good system if it works the way that they say it's going to work. And I know you've seen it before, but lovely transition from well, it must have been autumn, obviously. So I don't know why there was pollen there to winter. In fact, they seem to miss out autumn. But anyway, never mind that. I'm sure it'll all work out in the real game. And some lovely sort of... And this seems to be... It's either dusk or dawn at the moment. But there's nice sort of long shadows. It just looks really good.
And it does seem that, really when it comes to this whole system of kind of, over excavating resources, that, it's going to be very good to use on your enemies in PvP to starve them of resources, to, stop them repairing their castle or something like that. So it's going to have quite a strategic importance as well as kind of being a functional day-to-day one.
That's a good idea. I hadn't thought about that. But yeah, that's something to do. Kill their gatherers, but then gather all their materials.
Absolutely.
Wow, you're a sneaky little fucker, you are. That's I woun't like to be one of our enemies.
Fight a war on multiple fronts, Palmer.
No. But this is the way to do it. I mean, as you know, one of the things that I like playing is EVE Online, which is a brilliant game. And the economic side of the game, economic warfare, is huge. Taking away your enemy's ability to make money is actually more important in EVE than killing them. Because the truth is, you kill somebody, they can just respawn, can't they?
Exactly, yeah.
But if you take away their ability to make money, especially in a game like EVE, and I think Ashes is hopefully going to be similar, whereby you need an income because you need to buy materials. You need, not materials, but weapons, basically. You need to buy spaceships. But in Ashes, I guess it's going to be weapons and equipment and stuff. So having a market to buy that stuff and having the income to buy it is going to be really important. So, destroying somebody's market. This all sounds a little bit callous, doesn't it? A little bit sadistic, but it's a game. It's all part of the fun.
Absolutely.
Travel to other nodes and steal their lumber.
Yeah.
Well, now that's a decision you need to make.
Travel to other nodes and steal their lumber. What a
If
good
you need
idea.
help with that, you can recruit me.
So I see here that we have a particular type of flower that I believe only spawns in winter.
Ooh.
Is that right?
Yeah, totally. This is the Gloobypros, and it's a beautiful flower, but it can only be found in winter. So, the next.
I love the I love the effect that that flower just got wrecked.
Yeah, that sickle's doing work.
I know. Let me see if we can watch that flower regrow here. Does it regrow? Flower.
Of course.
Yeah, it definitely should.
Are you coming back, little flower? Oh, there it is! We found it! Oh, and it's in a bulb state. I can't interact with it yet. That is so cool.
It's not ready. You want the petals, so.
Oh yeah, and then actually to add to this, each state has its own physics profile. Like you saw trees, like you saw the flowers right here, and some.
I love the way Stephen, he always behaves as if he's never seen it before. It can't be true, surely, that he's, whatever his, I don't know what his title is, executive producer or something, but it can't surely be true that the first time he's seen this stuff is when he does a stream. Because, what if it's rubbish? What if he sees it and it's no good? What would he say?
It's all for the stream, Palmer. It's all for the marketing. Don't you worry.
That's pretty cool. And obviously, when you have potentially hundreds of different players that might be within close proximity as you, and they're all in this environment interacting with those different elements of the terrain, those different resources and gatherables, this is a nice way for us to ensure that performance is still good.
Correct. I think the biggest thing would be here also networking, is being able to have as less data as possible to send to the clients, so it's more performant on the server.
Hang on, let's go back.
For us to ensure.
So, there is just a moment there. Coming up now, I think. Yeah, just this bit here, that looks so nice. Doesn't that look good?
Absolutely, it certainly does. I mean, helps that Steven's an elf as well, because, you know, elves are the best race. But, yeah.
What? But you normally play the little child race, don't you, in every game you play?
No, Palmer, you know that's not true. You're trying to bait me. No, I do not. I play elf and everything.
Dust that was relevant for the season and the area. And now what happens when we chop this tree down in winter?
Oh,
Let us see.
is it going to be different?
I hope it doesn't hit the deer.
Oh, that would be unfortunate. I also hope it doesn't hit. Okay.
Is it going to
You're good, dear. Don't you worry.
snow? Oh,
It kicks up snow.
Ah,
What is that?
fantastic.
Good.
Is that a sandal? Is that a sandal scarecrow?
Looks like it.
Oh, it's a
Yeah.
sandal
Oh,
scarecrow.
God.
Oh, and we're in the face.
I think there was a collision of a skeleton mesh that you're
Oh,
wearing.
Could we maybe
That's
skip a little bit here,
This
Palmer?
is awesome.
I've seen enough
Oh, I love
sandals.
that.
Yeah.
That is-
So Stephen
There are
has
some
this weird thing about sandals, as Ashes fans know. Yes, as I was saying, Stephen has this weird thing about sandals, as Ashes fans know. So the devs put sandals in the game every so often. There's little jokes.
about the interaction of surveying with revealing resources within the world. And without that element, for example, what we showed you today with mining, you may not know what you're going to get until you complete that harvesting action. How are you guys feeling about that? We think that it creates an interesting dynamic between utilizing resources necessary to initiate that surveying sequence and what it represents for players as they choose to spend their time and or the meaningful choice they might make in moving to a particular area based on what resources are available in that location and discovering that through the surveying system. That's another point of feedback that we want to collect from you guys. So with that being said, are there anything else that you guys want to chat about before we close off?
Yeah, what do you think? I think the surveying sounds good.
I must admit, for me, Palmer, I think it looks very good, but functionally, I think it's a bit complicated, and I do worry about the scope creep that's kind of gradually happening with all of the features that we've seen so far. So for me, very cool, very interesting, but I think maybe a little bit too complex, personally.
Fair enough. I like, yeah, fair enough. I think we'll have to see how it works in practice.
Very true. Yeah, absolutely. You know, it's
I
all
think we
speculation.
covered it
isn't
all.
for sure.
Just thanks for including me in the chat. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Can't wait to hear everyone's feedback. Super excited.
It's going to
Yeah,
be a
this
lot
was-
of fun.
This was lots of fun. Thank you for inviting us.
Absolutely. I think it's going to be a lot of fun to watch players interact with the new gathering systems as people get to see how surveying and land management accompany player actions within the world. So with that being said, guys, we did want to give you this update on where gathering has come to now, both from a visual bar
Yeah, it's
as
good.
well as give a little bit of insight to the new systems like surveying and land management. And we want you to chew on that. We want you to think about that and give us your feedback both in the YouTube video, on Twitch, on our forums, on Discord, all the places. We, of course, appreciate that, and it is a very important.
Hang on. He's also wearing, he's wearing a sort of rather Santa Claus type costume, but wearing a nice costume, isn't he? I mean, the deer looks good, and the costume looks good. And, just look at, I know I've paused it, so it's just still image, but I'd be quite pleased with that. I'm not sure that I can think of an MMO that looks better than that at the moment.
No, it looks very good, and from my experience, something that MMOs have all struggled to do are kind of proper snowy zones, whereas this here really ticks all of the boxes for me personally.
Yeah.
Important step in bringing you guys Alpha 2 and ultimately Ashes of Creation. So with that being said, thank you guys. Hope you enjoyed, and we will see you back on stream.
Thanks, Stephen.
Goodbye, Stephen. Thank you very much. So, overall, Naris, what are your thoughts?
My thoughts overall, very impressive graphics. I do like the idea of the seasons. When it comes to the surveying and other things, they're very interesting, very original. But like I said, I do kind of have, my concerns in terms of the complexities and the scope creep. How about you, Palmer?
What I'm not quite clear on with the surveying is what happens if you don't do any surveying and just sort of go around chopping down trees and gathering plants and stuff. I mean, presumably you don't actually need to do surveying, because if you just go mining, you'll find out what's there anyway. I don't know if it actually changes. Like, if you've done surveying, does that mean you have more chance of finding the stuff than if you haven't done surveying but you mine the same rocks? But I mean, on balance, no, I don't really have a problem with it. I mean, yeah, so a few things. Looks great graphically. The fact that they've changed it so that all the trees you can see and like most things you can see are gatherable, that's really fantastic. The idea of areas sort of losing their resources if they're managed badly or if they're over-farmed, that's really interesting, because it might sort of drive people to go to other parts of the map to do stuff, which will be good. And I don't mind surveying. I mean, partly because I'm used to it in Star Wars, and it's something I kind of like. It's a way of sort of discovering things, and this is one of the things I like about Ashes. It seems to me it's going to have this dual element where there's almost contradictory, really, whereby you're not going to be travelling. Well, some players will, but a lot of players probably won't be travelling too much, because you will sort of have a home area and there's no swift travel, so travelling becomes a big deal. But at the same time, within your region, and hopefully you will have sort of quite a big region that you're able to explore without too much hassle. There's going to be a lot of stuff to find, so I think that's going to be good. No, I like it. I think it's looking good to me. What are your final thoughts? A final word goes to you.
Overall, very impressive. It's nice to see the team pushing the boundaries, and like you said, we'll see when we hopefully get to test it in Alpha 2, and we see how the systems develop. But overall, another stream, some really cool reveals, and some really immersive and interesting features being shown.
Great stuff. Somebody's trying to call me up. Thank you for watching. Like and subscribe, and join us for the next one. Thank you very much indeed.
See you for the next one, folks. Bye-bye for now.